in, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, RFK Refugees podcast. Ted here. John is currently, I'm assuming, cuddled in the fetal position with a fever. Fortunately, not feeling a little under the weather. We hope he certainly feels better, certainly to watch the Spirit game at 7 p.m. today. But joining us is Brendan Hines-Ike, defender, scorer of golazos. He's joining the show for this. Brendan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump right into it, man. I know you talked about the goal in your post game show, so I won't have you sort of rehash that because you're a player. You saw the ball, you took the shot, and it was amazing. I know the drill, but I want to talk because DC had goals last year from defenders, and I think that became sort of a point of contention. But this goal certainly felt a little different. It felt like this. Although you are a defender, your goal is to stop the ball from going in the net. This came from sort of an attacking style system. Is this something sort of that Losada has been preaching at sort of having defenders and sort of everybody press high in the attack? Has that been sort of a major part of preseason and trying to work in his system?
Yeah, definitely. And that's just kind of the way that Hernan wants to play. He's made it clear from the get-go that all, let's say, 11 players need to be involved. And that's even with the goalkeeper. Yeah, the goalkeeper's not going to press all the way up the field, but he needs to be alert and active for what's happening. And that's definitely for the defenders, the three central defenders. And that's a little bit of a newer way of playing, that the defenders are so higher up, in the field. And that's kind of a twofold. It helps with keeping possession a little bit more because you have more people available to get the ball moving around in the offensive half, but then at the same time preventing counterattacks from the other team by having the defense be higher up and try to, snuff out those opportunities as early as possible. So that's definitely something you'll see, from Hernan's side this year and how he wants to play. I definitely saw it a bunch when I was in Belgium, that his teams like to play very high and don't let teams find a way to counterattack by any means.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to jump into another question. Actually, I think I'll go into that one. As far as playing sort of that higher line, what goes into you? I feel like as a defender, that is like the biggest risk for you is preventing counterattacks, because when you're pressed high and then all it takes is one ball over the top and suddenly you're on a foot race back. How does the communication go between, you and your other central defenders? Is there, I wasn't able to be at the game, so I couldn't see the whole field. But, as far as who stays back, who goes forward, is it alternating or are you are you designated and maybe Brilliant? We know he's a little on the older side. So maybe he says, I think I'll hang back a little bit and stop the counterattack.
No, it's always depending on the situation, and so obviously if a team plays with two forwards, we need to keep three defenders back. You always want to have numbers up. Mm-hmm. In this circumstance, we had only one forward that was there in Castellanos, and the two other central defenders had it covered. So naturally, the third central defender was me, and I can't just sit back and do nothing. So, my job is to get up and either try to help with possession or to find the man that's free in case we lose the ball and to, again, snuff out that counterattack as quickly as possible. And to be fair, even New York did a good job against us in some circumstances. We weren't as sharp as we were in the preseason with that aspect of it. There was preseason games where we were much better at that, and that's just something that's going to come the more we practice that system. So, but definitely it's a new style for some guys. It's a new style for me. I'm used to if there's a counterattack, the moment the other team has the ball, the defense drops off. Because you want to have numbers behind the ball. In Hernan's case, if you have the possibility to act instead of react in the situation and see what's about to happen, then maybe you can prevent it from starting in the first place. So different, mindset, definitely, but both are effective. And I honestly prefer this style of play in any way. So
the fans, I think the fans certainly do after last night. We got our first taste, and I think we're begging for more next Saturday. Talking a little bit, I guess, about you spent your last club is in Belgium. You're on loan here in DC. Had you, when you found out DC was interested, I'm sure, I think at the time I tried to look at the timing because all this is trying to be a blur. But I think when you were linked to DC, I think Hernan had already been announced. Did that sort of impact your decision to maybe you had played against him and you're like, yeah, I want to go play for a coach like that? Did that help, maybe influence your decision to come to DC?
Definitely. Hernan was the first one who called me after he had arrived in DC, and he was in his quarantine, and I know that he at the moment was looking for central defenders. So he had a big role in me coming to DC for sure. Not only that I knew him and I knew his style, but also that he would understand my situation as well. And not to say that it would have been different if I would have come back to play for an American coach or whatnot, but I've been in Europe for so long now that I'm used to a certain style, and that was always a thought in my head. If I ever came back to MLS, who would I come back and play for? Because I felt it was going to be difficult for me to integrate back into the American system so easily, because I have been in Europe for such a long time. So knowing that he was already in the league and he knew how I played and how everything was working with me in my career, it made it a lot easier. And then to top that off, I loved the way that they played when they were in Belgium. I always admired that style, and I thought it would be a really fun team to play in because they got after it from the beginning. And not only from a fan standpoint, but from a player, it's a fun system to play in. So everyone's involved and trying to constantly be all over the opponent all the time. So it's like I said, he had a big factor for sure. But not to put anything against DC. DC is a great club. I've watched DC since I was really young, and I know all the history of DC United for a long time. So I know a lot of the the old players. I used to watch them all the time, and so I was definitely intrigued by the opportunity. And then, of course, having a new stadium always attracts a player right away. Nothing against RFK, but having a new stadium is a great thing in this day and age, and it really brings players in because they want to be a part of that kind of new era and new kind of way of doing things. So it was a win-win all around for me to be here.
Well, we're certainly glad to have you here in DC. Getting to that sort of, so you have that conversation with Hernan, you get on your first day of training. I think for a lot of fans, the sort of surprise, I think the first realization, I know you didn't play under Ben Olsen last year or were a part of any of those teams, but the realization I think over the past couple of weeks has been that Hernan's a very, very different coach from Ben. And I think a lot of people were sort of taken aback by his fitness comments, his comments about the fitness of the team. It seemed a lot of people kind of said, oh man, that's a really aggressive way to go about it. I mean, I know you've played around the world. Are fans maybe making too big of a deal out? Is that sometimes, that's how certain coaches do it? How do you sort of handle that, maybe for some players who are out of shape and, saying, well, forget this guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about, I'm fine. How does that feel sort of on that first day when he kind of brings that out, or maybe we making a little too much of it?
No, I mean, welcome to the new age of football. That's how it is, and I didn't know Ben at all as a coach. I watched him a bunch as a player, and what a great player he was for sure. With Hernan, he is a new age coach. So he works with the sports science, he works with the newest technology, and he works with the newest training habits that there is. And one of the things we looked at in preseason is we looked at teams that have had a smaller budget and aren't the big spenders of leagues, and how they were able to turn their team into a winning team most of the time, if not all the time. And it was the little details of being very conscious of what you're eating, how much you're drinking, how much you're sleeping, taking frequent hydration tests, blood tests, fat tests, those types of things. Because if you look at the calculations, and getting back to your question, this is definitely a thing that happens a lot in Europe. They look at often in the season how frequently a player has a chance to be injured, and obviously the more time players are out, that's more money lost for the club, that's more points lost for the club. So first and foremost, the key ingredient is that players are all available for the selection every single week. And it's no surprise right now we have quite a lot of injuries, so we need to get everybody on the same page with that. But I think once that's kind of in place and everybody is bought into that, which I do believe that the team has bought into it, as difficult as it has been from the start for a lot of guys, it will make a big difference in the long run. Who doesn't want to be, and I speak for myself, but I speak also for a lot of the players, who doesn't want to consistently get better, be a better athlete, be a better player. So it's a lot for a coach to say. And I think, that's something that's great about Hernan, is he's very open about things. There's no gray or anything. It's very black and white. It's straight to the point. And that's a nice thing for me. I always never liked working under people who kind of kept things kind of in the shadows or whatever. It was, here's the open truth. And as for players, it's a wake up call for, when we have our weights and our fats in front of everybody, and it's on show for everyone to see. But then, it also gives you a goal and a target to say, okay, I gotta get there, because I see these guys are performing, longer and better in the game, and I got to get to that standpoint. And then, it's just a consistent kind of bracket that people kind of want to keep working up, and it creates also healthy habits and competition inside the team. So, it's, for me, it's been a great thing. And I think for a lot of the players at the beginning, it was difficult, but they've transitioned over, and now it's more of a, okay, we're bought into this, and let's do what we can to become better.
I want to talk a little bit sort of about your early career, because you played at Chivas USA Academy, and when I saw that, I kind of had a little like, oh wow, that's been a fair bit since I heard that name before. You played, yeah, way back. You've also played. You went to Creighton and then to South Florida, and then you jumped pretty much. I think you had a little stint with the Ocean City Nor'easters, I think in the USL, but then you pretty much jumped directly to Europe. And I know at the time it was happening, but it was still kind of rare, and almost kind of has set where you're seeing a lot more Americans do that. They're making that jump. What sort of played that role into you saying, I'm going to make this jump? I know MLS is there, and I'm sure, I'll go pretty high in the draft, but I want to make a jump up to the next level. Was it, the offer was just too good? What sort of played into that role to take that risk?
Yeah, it was just, so good I couldn't turn it down. No, it was a couple of things. I mean, first and foremost, it was that I had always wanted to test my abilities in Europe. And I'd had the chance to do that the summer before I had signed. And that was part of the reason I wanted to make the transfer as well from colleges, was because the college I went to in South Florida allowed me to do that in the summer, to be able to go to Europe and try to see what was possible for me. But I think I really wanted to just do a different path than everybody else. I wanted to see what it would be like to go over there and see, like I said, how I tested and how I was versus these other players who have a lot more professional experience than I do, because a lot of them are professionals since they're 16 years old. I was already 19, 18, and I played already in college for a few years, but I didn't have any professional experience. And I think the other thing that was a big factor for me was the playing time, because I'd seen a lot of my friends go into the MLS draft and go number 1, number 5, number 10. And it was really difficult for them to get into the first team, play consistent minutes. It was a lot of times, immediate, loans to USL teams, and then trying to work their way in. And nothing against that. I think it's a system that, it works for some people, but for me, I wanted to play directly. And that was one of the things that I recognized with going to Sweden. I directly had a good communication with the coach. He had made it clear to me that you're going to play, and we need you from the get-go. And I needed to transition into learning what it was like to be a professional. That took some time, but once I was there, and I was there for 3 years, I was really happy that I went there first, because I already had at that moment 75 games under my belt by 22 years old, instead of having 3 or 4 in the MLS. And that makes a big difference for experience, because playing is everything for players. So it was looking back, it was a lot going through my mind at the time, but now it was a good decision for sure.
Yeah, and I see here you went third round in the 2016 Super Draft in Montreal. So I think you made the correct call there to make that jump.
To be fair, I was already signed in Sweden for 3-4 weeks.
Oh, that's
before
fair.
The draft
That's
started.
fair.
So
yeah,
it wasn't like I was, the third round pick or anything like that. No.
So Montreal took a flyer, I think, on that would impact that. I missed that part.
Yeah. No.
So let's talk about, we got the game coming up against New England. First game on the road. How's the team been handling it? Was there you get that first win? It felt like that was important. I mean, maybe it happened a bit earlier. I think fans were, maybe a little tempered by expectations from what we heard. But then to get the win, was it kind of on Monday? Was there a moment like, all right, now we got to settle down? What was the mood like kind of heading in? Or was everybody still buzzing a little bit?
Everybody's more happy in the week when you win, for sure. And that's how it always is, I think, for DC fans as well. Now you start the week off in a good spirit when the team has won on the weekend. But exactly as you said before that, it's directly, okay, it's behind us. It was last week. We now have another opponent this week, and that goes on game after game after game. Whether you win, lose, tie, you have to put it behind you. So we've directly put it behind us. We looked at the tape we needed to look at. On the first day, we were back in training, and then that was it. We've put it away, and now it's all the focus on New England, who's everybody knows, very difficult opponent, especially in New England. No surprise, it will be an extremely tough game for us. So that's where the focus has been and has to be for the remainder of this week.
We got a question here coming in from someone who's a fan of the show, who asked it's from Talon. I know a lot's been made about, the style of play and how Hernan, wants you guys to play. I think that's been kind of his big thing. But has there been any talk about, where expectations lie as far as, finishing in the season? Where do you expect this team, to finish in 2021?
I don't like those questions. It's impossible to say because it's such a long season, and you have so many factors with injuries, with trades, with all this kind of stuff. So I think the most important thing for a group like us, who's very young, I can say we have a very young group, is to take each week game by game. And so, instead of saying our whole goal for the whole year is to make playoffs or to win, the Eastern Conference, no. That's such a difficult thing to put out there, and it puts also a lot of extra pressure on younger players. That's not necessary. So I've been part of teams who have done that, and it's gone terribly wrong because then you start to overthink everything. If you do lose a game or whatever, and we will lose games. It's going to be very difficult to go every game with a win. That's part of this profession. But for sure, the most important thing is like I said, each week you focus on that game. The next week, it's the next game. You put that stuff behind you, win, loss, tie, and having that kind of like goldfish mentality. I don't know if everybody's ever watched Ted Lasso, but he talks about it in there. And I think it's so awesome. It's so awesome because it's so true. You have to put those things behind you and move on to the next, because we can't affect now what's going to happen, in San Jose, in Columbus. It can only be in New England. So if we start to put those together, week by week, and obviously having the fans behind us each week by week, focusing only on each game, we'll all get to where we need to be at the end of the season. Hopefully it's with a lot of wins and we're playing for something. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I haven't had a chance to check out Ted Lasso yet. I want to, but I'm waiting.
Man.
I got a lot of different streaming services. I'm waiting for like the 7-day trial so I can like get through it. I'll probably wait for the updated season to come out. Brendan, thank you so much for joining us. I got one last thing for you. I have watched. I'm sorry, I had to watch your goal that you suffered over and over again. Castellanos fouls you, doesn't he? He fouls you. No one was bringing it up. I think he fouls you. I have watched it over and over again. I think he takes you out and you inadvertently play the ball in the goal. Can you confirm or deny this for me? This is my Zapruder film.
There was words said about this after the goal, so I will just say that.
Yeah. All right, you'll be diplomatic. I appreciate it. We all, go. I don't want you to get in trouble with MLS, but it's fine. All right. Brendan, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's wonderful to have you, and best of luck on Saturday.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.